You're listening to Real Crime, the Movie Sleuth podcast.
What's up, everybody?
Hey.
What's up? Hi-ho.
Hi-ho.
Perfect.
We got a lot of people here tonight.
Yeah,
we even have somebody watching us again.
Ooh.
We have a voyeur here.
Creeping on us in the
hot.
corner. You would say that.
I like it.
So we have Andrea here tonight. She's not been here before, so welcome, Andrea.
Yay.
Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
Happy to have you.
Mara is here as usual. Hi, Mara.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. And Dana's back.
I'm back.
Welcome back, Dana.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about Jim Henson films tonight and the work of Jim Henson and his legacy. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into our sponsors, which, as with every week, we're going to mention the Flint Institute of Arts, who just re-upped with us for another year. So we'd like to thank them for that. Hopefully we get the check. I'm still waiting for the check.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get it, though. They're trustworthy.
Good.
Nice.
Yeah. But if you get a chance, make sure you head up to Flint. Check out the Flint Institute of Arts. Always great films up there. Great museum. Nice theater. Really cool place to go. So if you're into art and culture, definitely check it out. And then, of course, we have Matador Martial Arts. Rudy was here with us last week talking about toys. So check that episode out with him, too. So, and then Liam's like, projectorscreen.com.
Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Liam.
Thank you.
Projectorscreen.com. Make sure you guys check out those guys too. Lots of really cool tech for home theaters and whatnot. So, in news this week, not a lot going on again.
Yeah.
It's been kind of dead, but we did just pick up on a news story earlier today that Jordan Peele has just inked a 5-year deal with Universal. He's going to be making 2 new movies with them and has all kind of like first look stuff going on with it. So
That'll be
Nice.
interesting.
that's really cool, actually. He's a very creative director, so really looking forward to that. And then Liam actually published an article on the site earlier today. Ghostbusters is coming back via Fathom Events for its 35th anniversary.
Oh,
So-
beautiful.
So many
Yeah.
anniversaries this year. It's wild.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
That's pretty cool.
35 years. Wow.
That makes me feel
We are
I
so
know.
honestly
old.
old.
Yeah.
Pretty much
We
as
are
old as I
so
am right there. Yeah.
Stinking old.
Yeah.
agree.
That's a
Last-
big number.
Yeah, I mean, the last one was The Matrix, which
Yeah.
we won't talk about that again.
Uh-oh.
That was terrible. We told that story when we
What?
did the Matrix episode. How all the
I didn't
alarms
listen,
and everything started going off.
What? How about because it was 20 years?
No. As soon as Neo is getting ready to enter the Matrix, he's
Yeah.
like, blue pill or red pill.
Yeah.
I'm like sitting there like, yeah, this is awesome. Dolby Cinema. He goes to take the pill and all the alarms start going off in the theater and the strobe lights and everything.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, this is kind of surreal. This is pretty cool. Like,
It's
yeah.
fully immersive.
And then ends up that somebody had let off one of the fire extinguishers in the hallway at AMC.
Oh my
So they had to
gosh.
evacuate
I'd
everybody.
be freaking out.
I was so pissed.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I'd be mad.
I was so
Totally,
excited.
yeah.
Never got to go back.
Bummer.
Yeah. So, all right. In other news, there were some rumors yesterday reported that they're thinking about doing another season of Twin Peaks: The Return.
I hope that's true. I
heck
saw
yeah.
that. I got so stoked when I saw that, but I didn't want to get too excited in case it's bogus.
Right.
Yeah. Some of that stuff you just got to take with a grain of salt.
I think this is one of them.
But at least it gives us hope.
Yes, that's true. Fingers crossed. I'm all for it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me three.
I haven't finished the last season yet.
Oh,
Oh, come on.
get in there.
I know. I dedicate 10 hours a day to the site outside of my job. So, yeah.
Okay, we get it. We get it.
I'm always like-
busy man.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
to write a lot about movies,
Yeah.
but I don't get to watch a lot of movies anymore,
Yeah.
which is kind of sad. But in other news, we got the Birds of Prey trailer today. I wasn't completely sold on this. It looked really like discount store to me.
Yeah.
I'm still not really sold on the idea, but we'll see in a couple months.
Yeah.
Then it comes out in February, I believe, February 7th, 2020.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like Margot Robbie. I think she's great in everything she does, but yeah, was not sold on that trailer. All right. And last little bit of news is that Deborah Chow, female director, is going to be helming the entire Obi-Wan series for Disney Plus.
That's pretty
Nice.
cool.
Wow.
I always love this with Star Wars. As many female creatives as we can get into Star Wars, that's what we need.
I agree.
I like the way that has all changed with Star Wars.
I
So.
agree with
Absolutely.
that, and I think that that's like probably like as someone who like grew up wanting to to make film. I think that that's like almost more important than the actual like character representation.
Right.
That to actually see like representation of someone who's like you who created something.
I
Sure,
agree
it's
with
paramount. Yep.
So that's the last little bit of news today. And then in new releases, Joker is out on Thursday night. So me and Michelle are actually seeing it tomorrow.
Lucky.
Cool.
Have fun.
I'm being cautiously optimistic.
I can't wait to hear what both of you have to say about it.
Me too.
It's kind of getting the negative reaction now. Yeah, we're at the front end. It was all positive,
Right.
and now we're starting to get the 3 or 5 star reviews. Mara's throwing shit at me again. I take so much abuse here.
I know, right?
Every week, abuse. Yeah. So Joker this week, and then Lucy in the Sky, the science fiction film with Natalie Portman, is in limited release, and that's getting ravaged critically. Yeah, it's at like 3.5 or 4 stars on IMDb right now. I love her though. Like
she's
I always
great.
think she's great.
Oh, always.
So
I'll see it.
who knows? I'll see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so suggested viewings. I'm gonna start, and then we'll just kind of do our roundabout like we always do. I had the distinct luck of seeing Rambo last week, the 5th entry in the decades-long series, and it's dumb as shit. It's totally stupid.
Tell us what you really think.
But he loves it.
But I loved it. I mean, like Rambo, the 2008 film. Hey, Beagles. I know, it's hilarious, isn't it?
Still going
That they're loud enough so you can
We
hear
need
them.
quiet for the show. Beagles. It's a sound effect.
Some
Telling
thoughts
you
on
what
Rambo
they
they
think
want
of
to share.
Rambo. Yeah.
Exactly.
They basically take Rambo and they almost turn him into like a horror antagonist. I mean, the violence that takes place in this movie is so out of control. Like hearts being ripped out of chests, people
What?
being sliced
Wow.
open from like the
Mama.
throat down to the pelvis. You know, there is like, it goes.
Come on.
Yeah, it goes absolutely insane. The way they handled the end of the last movie with the turret on the Jeep when he just shredded everybody, it changes it. This time it's all hand-to-hand shit. And it's crazy. And all booby traps.
Oh, I thought you were going to say all boobies.
All booty trap.
Booty trap.
Got
even
booty
better.
trap.
Booty shirt on.
Yeah. Booty trap. So, yeah, I'm going to suggest seeing Rambo just for the sheer idiocy of it. It's just one of those movies you have to see because it's so stupid.
Well, how does like
I'll see it.
I guess the gore look? Is it CGI or?
Some of it's CGI, but a lot of it's practical.
Cool.
So it's a mix, which, you know, now, like I was at a panel in Atlanta for the Sci-Fi Film Fest.
Yeah.
And one of the visual effects coordinators was there and was talking about how that's the best way to go now, is to not just go all practical or all CGI, that they're really trying to do a hybrid, in that it looks way better that way.
Yeah.
That they can pull off a lot more with the CGI if they mix it in with the practical,
Makes
because then
sense.
everybody's not going like, oh, look at all that computer generated crap.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was a mix. So
That's cool.
I'm done talking about Rambo. Andrea.
So it can be a show, right?
It can be whatever you want it to
Whatever you want.
Okay.
It could be an album if you wanted it to be.
I'm not going to tell you to view an album. So the one I was going to recommend in honor of the topic this week is the show Mongrels. I feel like nobody has seen that show. It was a show that was aired on BBC Three in 2010, and it has all these adorable like Muppet-esque puppets in it. but it's it's adult, and British and delightful, and I just keep recommending it to people, and they keep not watching it. So I just want at least one of you to go out and take my recommendation and actually freaking see this thing and see what I saw in it. It was a short-lived little show. I think it was only on for like a season or two, but it was a good time while it was on there. Have any of you seen it?
No.
Mongrels? No. Okay. I mean, it's if you're Henson fans, I think it's great. It's got a little more of the adult humor without like going full Happy Time Murders with like puppets ejaculating all over the place or whatever. But it's I don't know. It's a delight. So that's what I got for you.
That's what I like to hear. A delight.
A delight.
Yeah.
Pure delight.
Yeah.
All right, Mara.
I'm also going to suggest a show this week, and it's also a delightful show. It's the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which I just finished up today, actually, and the third season is going to start in December, and I'm very excited. I like instantly kind of fell in love with that show, and it goes by so fast. It's like candy, and I just love it. All the characters, great. Costumes and sets, takes place in the 50s, and it's just perfect.
Very cool. All right, Dana, you got the floor.
All right. Well, first of all, I have to apologize. Keep clearing my throat because I'm getting over some crud.
Don't apologize to anybody ever.
Just
Okay.
do it loud into the microphone.
Own it.
Yeah.
So, like the critic. It will come to surprise no one that what I'm going to recommend is part 2 of Disenchantment on Netflix. Came out on Friday, the 27th. It's out and it's very good. It's another 10 episodes of Disenchantment. Matt Groening's newest animated show. A lot of people are saying like it's Futurama in the past, but it's not really. It's a little bit more than that. It's a little more involved than that, but it is closer to Futurama than it is to The Simpsons. So if you're a Futurama fan, you like to look for little background jokes and really smart humor, and a lot of really good character development happens this season too. So I totally recommend it 110%. I love it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first what do they call it? Like part, I guess.
Part 1, part 2.
And part 2 came out kind of under my radar, I guess, last weekend. But
Yeah.
I'll probably check that out. That was a fun show.
Yeah,
I
it's
liked
a
it.
well done.
Honestly, I think I for Futurama, I don't dislike that show, but I never really kind of like hooked onto it. I
Yeah,
kind of
same
like
here.
Disenchantment a little better, to be honest.
That's interesting because Futurama is like my favorite show of all time. So
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who feel that way, and I don't like dislike it, but
yeah, it just isn't. It wasn't what you glommed onto. From
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
But it's nice for me to hear people talking better about Disenchantment because when it first came out, I mean, everybody was ragging on it because it wasn't The Simpsons or Futurama, and I'm just like, give it a chance, give it
Right.
a chance to warm up. And now that it has, people are like, oh yeah. So Dana was right.
well, it's like, do you really want another Futurama or Simpsons? We have Futurama
No,
and
right.
The Simpsons, and they have their classic characters and
Exactly.
episodes, and we can do. Matt Groening can do more.
Sure.
Yep. So that's my recommendation. Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it
as
now.
Lucy would say. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do
Go to
it.
the chopper. All right. Not going there.
No, we're not going.
Because once we start with that, it doesn't stop.
No, this is true.
This
is very true.
Of Schwarzenegger impersonation.
I don't have a
why-
Schwarzenegger impression.
I wonder why Schwarzenegger never did a Muppets movie. Can you imagine how
Aw,
badass
he
that
should.
would
Yeah,
be?
she
Still
really should've.
alive, guys. Let's just
They gotta get
fingers
him in it.
crossed. That could still happen.
I want to see him be sexually harassed by Miss Piggy.
Oh.
Yeah, a scene with him and Miss Piggy would
Yeah.
be
Talk about the
fantastic.
beefcake.
She could beat the heck out of him too. She knows
Yeah. Oh,
karate.
yeah.
She could be
I would
really
agree.
fierce.
He was the
Yeah.
Kung Fu master.
Yes.
Miss Piggy, the world's fiercest predator.
It's true.
All right. So we're talking about Jim Henson tonight. And where do you guys want to go with this? Do we want to talk about his movies? Do we want to talk about the effect he's had on film? Dana, why don't you kind of lead us off with this?
Oh boy. Well, as I was telling the poor people who drove me, I could talk about this topic all night because I'm a huge Henson nerd. I love everything that he's touched, everything that he's done. And what a lot of people don't know about Jim Henson is that he never actually set out to be a puppeteer. When he went to university, he actually majored in home economics and in commercial art.
Interesting.
And he never intended to be in puppetry. He just really wanted to be on TV. Because when he was little, his family, they used to gather on the radio. They would, listen to the old radio shows. And when TV started, he realized this is this huge, great, medium, and it was different and it was new. And he was just really into it and interested in where it could go and what it could do. So when he was basically, something went out that said, hey, we're looking for somebody to do a puppet show. He made some puppets and he showed up and he got a show, and it was called Sam and Friends, and that's how he got his start. So that's kind of where he started, but he also did a lot of animation and short film, and a lot of it was really strange and psychological and just really different from the stuff that most people think of when they think of Jim Henson. And so I might talk a little bit about that stuff.
So what led him into the Muppet Show? How did we get there from this early work to getting to the Muppet Show? How did that happen?
It started with Sesame Street, because there were a group of people who basically they went to a dinner party and they started talking about TV and how children were really interested in commercials. Like, one of the founders of Sesame Street talked about how, my little girl goes around the house all day singing the commercial jingles. She memorizes these things. She remembers them. What if we could use television to help kids like her remember numbers and letters and concepts? And so that's kind of how that started. And one of them, knew Jim Henson and knew of his puppets because he was doing commercial work at the time.
This was like the late 60s, right? I think because Sesame Street was like 69 was the first season, right?
Yep, it's 50 years old this November.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Another anniversary.
Wow.
Yes, a huge one. It's the longest running show on TV, I believe.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Of all time. And
Wow.
it started in 69 and it's still going strong. They're still making episodes now.
They sure are.
So, but yeah, he was doing
than
commercials.
Gunsmoke?
Yeah. I don't know how many years was Gunsmoke. I don't know. But it's got to be up there. But yeah, 50 years. And, but so yeah, in the mid 60s, he'd been doing some of his short films. And then he was doing like commercial work. Like he did those famous Wilkins coffee commercials. Those are so funny. That's where that humor, from the Muppet Show, you see that in those original. There would be a character who was advertising for Wilkins, and he'd ask the other character, "Do you like Wilkins coffee?" And he'd be like, "No," and then he'd blow him away with a cannon. "Now, do you like Wilkins coffee?" And then he'd point the cannon at the camera. "Do you like Wilkins coffee?"
That's funny.
So me and Dana are close enough in age, within 5 years. But did both of you grow up with Sesame Street?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Totally.
Was that like your introduction to Jim Henson?
I think Sesame Street and Muppets, I think kind of at the same time from what my mom was saying. It was pretty much the only thing I would pay attention to as a kid. Everything else just bored the heck out of me. But anytime I'd see one of those little puppets, I would just completely be enraptured by them and just give them my full attention.
Well, because there was always so much activity going on.
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of had to pay attention.
Yeah.
So what about you?
I mean, same. I kind of remember thinking of Sesame Street and Muppets as being, the same because Kermit was the crossover character.
Yeah.
So I had recognized him from Sesame Street and then also remember him from watching The Great Muppet Caper, which was like one of the movies that we had on tape when I was a kid that I obsessively watched. So that was like one of my, first like cinephiliac like moments, or is like with that movie, Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah, I saw that at the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Muppet movie. We saw all of them when we were kids, because we were at the movies all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't alive when the Muppet movie came out. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not either. I don't think
Excuses.
I don't think I was when Muppets Take Manhattan came out either.
I was still a couple of months away from
Yeah.
because it just turned 40 this July, the Muppet movie.
Gotcha.
So we transition then from Sesame Street to
To
The Muppet
the
specials?
Muppets, basically. Yeah, there were some Muppet specials, and there were a few instances like the Ed Sullivan Show. Ralph the dog was on Ed Sullivan for a while.
Oh, really?
And so was an early version of Kermit before he became a frog.
Aw. When he was like the little
Little
bluish
tadpole.
green thing.
Yeah, he was
or-
like this. Well, he was
I
this
forgot
weird
about
looking,
that.
Yeah.
He was this
Yeah.
weird looking like lizard thing.
Yeah,
he was actually the first Kermit puppet was made out of an old green coat and a ping pong ball.
I love it.
The original Kermit was made out of that.
There was that there was a segment that he had on Saturday Night Live too on
Yeah.
the first season. I
yeah,
can't,
yeah.
I can't remember what it's called right now.
I don't either, but it was like a planet. There was all these
Yeah,
aliens,
it
and there was
was
like a king and his family. It was really bizarre. I
It
don't
is
remember the
very
name of it,
bizarre. It's
but
like
it was
hard
really
to
odd.
follow. I watched a bunch of them when I was
Yeah.
I like watched out of curiosity the whole first season of Saturday Night Live a few years back, and I was like, wow, I did not know there was a Jim Henson segment like every week on the show.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to how ubiquitous Jim Henson was in our early lives. Like
Yeah.
he was just everywhere.
Absolutely.
You know, he was, and and even the generation before us. I mean, he was just all over the place.
Right.
TV, movies, animation, puppets. He did a lot of the early films, like the little interstitial films on Sesame Street. He did himself. There's a specific series called Numerosity that he did. There were films from 1 to 10, and they were just really simple, and they would just count.
The Land of
different things.
Gorge.
That's
There you
what it
go.
was.
Okay.
Yes.
Liam,
Land
you're
of
good
some-
for something tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Again.
Liam.
He's not even here.
He's our like remote
Yeah.
co-host.
Spirit.
Our IMDb liaison over
There you
there.
go.
We should get Liam here every week.
There you go. Just have him
As
just
a
like in the
fact checker?
corner being like,
Well,
hey,
as our fact checker,
who's
and he
this
could be
called?
doing. Liam should be if Liam's not on the show, maybe Liam could be doing this. I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
thinking on my feet right
There
now.
you
Yeah.
go. That's an idea.
Considering I just spent a couple $1,000s on more microphones and more preamps, so we
Yeah.
can
When here I am getting
do
my germs
more.
all over this.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Liam, you're the off-camera guy from here on out.
Yes.
Nobody
Can't
wants
say
to
no,
look
Liam,
No.
Yeah.
because it's on
You're not
air.
here.
Can't say no.
So, did Lucasfilm use Jim Henson at all when doing any of the puppetry stuff? This is something I've wondered about for a while.
Well, now, I'm not as clear on that because I don't know as much about Star Wars, but I do know that Yoda obviously was done. Frank Oz
yeah.
puppeted Yoda and voiced him. At least I'm pretty sure he puppeted him.
I've just got to
Probably
imagine,
was more
Yeah.
than one puppeteer.
like Jabba the Hutt was a giant puppet, and there are
Yeah.
like 7 dudes inside that thing operating that thing. And I have to
Exactly.
imagine that some of that transfers over, in the industry. Like,
Yeah.
For sure.
we're puppeteers, we do the Muppets, but we're also going to be this big,
Right.
giant, slimy slug
thing.
thing
Yes,
that gets choked out deservedly.
Hot.
but that's one of the reasons why I love so much of his early stuff, because it was so abstract and irreverent. I mean, you would have like a scene where like a little girl was walking down the street, and then like there'd be a pile of hair and it would come alive and eat her, or stuff like that. It was just crazy stuff that he always was pushing the envelope and trying to experiment with what puppetry could do. As once he realized that he could tell stories with puppets, and he started to love the medium more, the further he took it. And we have him to thank for a lot of the innovation that puppetry, had happened throughout the
Absolutely.
years.
Yeah, I always think about that iconic scene in the Muppet movie where they ride bikes.
Yes.
And that just
yes.
always like blew my mind when I was a kid. Like when I saw that for the first time, I thought, well, they're real. Like
Yeah.
they're
they're
actually
actual.
things that people do
Right.
not control. Like I was just confused.
I still think to this day, like, I get lost in those movies. Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
hard for me to just realize they're puppets sometimes. They're just such iconic characters. Like, I just feel like, oh, that's Kermit, that's Miss Piggy. Not
Yeah.
that they're, like, these little
Yeah.
puppets on the screen.
Right.
Like, I really do feel
Yeah.
like that. That's how good of a job they do.
Well, and like on Sesame Street, they used to bring in little kids to interact with the puppets. Those were unscripted. Those kids, they would just interact with the puppets, and they never, you notice, they never look down at the puppeteer. They they always interact right with the puppets. And I think that's like a universal thing. We all kind of, they take on a life of their own.
They do.
Yeah.
They really do.
And it speaks to the talent of the person who's, the puppeteer.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I'm trying to put myself in Jim Henson's shoes right now. The Muppet movie, when it came out, was a game changer because I think this was one of the first movies that used all puppets through the entire film. Yes, there was human interaction as well, but it's also a musical. So I'm thinking about all of that. You have to, number one, have all your puppet design work done, but you have to make those puppets not appear like, if you watch the TV show, it's basically from the waist up.
Yeah.
Most of it. The Muppet movie kind of transitioned from doing that waist up thing to seeing the full physical form of these animals walking and talking and going from point A to point B, driving cars, doing crazy stuff, sitting in a river on a log.
They're
playing.
in the real world instead of like on a stage.
Yeah.
It's very different.
And it's something that wouldn't happen today because this would be one of those things that would be all CGI because it would make it easier.
Yes.
And that's why, what was the movie that we saw with Melissa McCarthy with the puppets?
Happy Time Murders.
Yeah, like that's why I love that movie so much. It wasn't because it was a great movie. It was a good callback to, we can actually do puppets and have them exist in the same realm as us. So I think the Muppet movie was a game changer in that fact, and the music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul Williams' score in that movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or soundtrack, I guess. Yeah. Love it.
And
so
then that's
classic.
That's the one where they do the Muppet Babies.
No,
part,
No,
right? Or
that's
is that
in
Muppets
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 Take
Takes
Manhattan.
Okay.
Yes.
I always like really blend those two movies in my mind.
Me too.
I love that.
But I do too. It like, seriously, I feel like a dork, but every time I watch that movie and that scene comes on, I choke up.
Me too.
It like really chokes me up.
Yeah. Just the Muppets in general kind of choke me up. 'Cause
Me
they
too.
Just, like that nostalgia. I don't know. There's just something so
Yeah.
sweet about it, and just takes me back to
I feel the
place,
same way
man.
about Scarface.
Shut up.
Each their own.
No,
We had to. You can't
it's-
just let us have our sentimental moment.
I'm sorry.
It's
You know,
optimistic in a
Yeah.
way that a lot of current media is not. It
You're right.
had a
Just
rose-tinted sort of, hey, let's, we take these strangers at the beginning of the movie, and by the end of the movie, they're a family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And,
sweet.
yeah.
and there's that whole, keep believing, keep pretending, keep
Yeah.
following that rainbow. And it was so, there was no sarcasm. There was no, they could be kind of irreverent and they could rib each other, but
Right.
they
Of
were
course,
never
yeah.
mean to each other. They never
Right.
bullied each other. It was just this nice thing that everyone could enjoy. And, no matter what you were interested in, you could enjoy something about the Muppets. And, there were so many like weirdly dated jokes now in some of it, but
Sure.
but that was for the adults in the audience. And he was a family entertainer
Right.
like Disney intended to be.
So if we were just going to comment on that movie, like, what's your favorite character in that movie?
In the Muppet movie?
Yeah, I always like Animal. Like, I just can't get enough. I play
good
drums,
in that movie.
so as a hobby.
Yeah, who
But
doesn't love him?
yeah, just totally unhinged. There's nothing to him other than power. Like, I'm going to smash the fuck out of these drums and be
everything else.
insane. And I love that. I love that they're
cool.
just like,
I
oh
love
yeah, just beat shit. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's something fantastic about him.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know, in general, over the years, I've really grown a fondness to Fozzie.
Yeah.
There's something just really,
Yeah.
he just seems like he'd be such a good friend. And there's something about his like can-do attitude. Like he keeps wanting to be funny and trying so hard. No matter how many tomatoes get thrown at him, he just keeps going. Bless his little furry heart, And it just, I don't know. I feel like there's some sort of indicator of like where I'm at in life. Like it used to be Animal. I feel like, like back in the day it used to be Animal, but I feel like I don't know if I've just like softened or something, or just, I don't know, I've started valuing different things in my life. And yeah, Fozzie in that movie in general, I've really grown a liking to that guy.
I love Fozzie too, and one of my favorite Fozzie scenes is on the Muppet Show when Harry Belafonte is on and they're singing the Banana Boat song, and he keeps getting the cue wrong, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed," and he just can't get it right, and it is so funny. I know, because we've all been him at some point.
I think maybe that's it. Maybe
what
in my
it is.
maturity, like I've just screwed up so much in life that I'm just like, I understand, Fozzie. It's okay.
We all have.
Just keep going, man.
My favorites have always been been Ratso and the Rats.
Rizzo is great.
Yeah.
Steve Whitmire put everything he had into that little character.
Sure did.
That.
Yeah, he's great.
I think the thing with Fozzie is like he's like a perfect balance to Kermit.
Yes.
Like they're both so sweet, but I just think they kind of balance each other out in a way.
Yeah,
For sure.
they do.
And they're best friends.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that they're just
Pure.
like,
It's so sweet.
yeah.
Okay, Dana, you'll know this because I'm drawing a blank. But what is the guy's name who throws the fish?
Lou Zealand.
Lou Zealand.
Oh, that's
New
right.
Zealand
Yeah.
throws
I
the
really
fish.
like him, and I
He's
like
fun.
Gonzo too. I like
Gonzo's
the
great.
yeah.
Yeah, Gonzo is my favorite character in the Muppet movie because he sings my favorite song in the movie. It's called "I'm Going to Go Back There Someday."
Oh, yeah.
And to me, that song encapsulates everything about the Muppets and about the nostalgia that we're talking about. Because what he's singing about isn't a place; it's a time, it's a feeling. It's the line in that song that goes, "There's not a word yet for old friends who've just met." That's the essence of the Muppets right there. No matter where you are in life, you'll find something in the Muppets that you can latch onto and say, I see myself in that. And Gonzo was just such a weirdo and such an outcast, but they took him in right away and said, you know what, you're pretty cool. Yeah. You're married to a chicken and, you're a daredevil in a hot air balloon, but
Camilla.
welcome aboard. Let's all go to Hollywood and have a good time.
Absolutely. The Muppets are so accepting. Like, we don't know what you are, you blue furry thing, but hop aboard, buddy.
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
You're just some kind of mutant, but whatever.
Yeah.
Can you sing?
Yeah.
Come on,
You're
let's
right,
go.
you can you're in.
Let's go.
We got a place for you.
Let's go.
So after the Muppet movie was The Great Muppet Caper, or did Dark
Yes.
Crystal come before that?
No, Dark Crystal came later. It came in the
Okay.
80s. I don't remember what year the Muppet Caper came out. These, I'm kind of fuzzy on the
Here.
years.
I got it up
If
right
you've got
now.
I
IMDb
feel like
on
Dark
there.
Crystal was like 83. The original
Muppet movie was 79. Muppet
Yep.
Caper was 81.
81.
So it did come before.
Dark
I was like
Crystal,
super
82.
like, I was
Okay.
still in diapers when that came
Wow,
out.
I thought Muppet Take Manhattan came out before Great Muppet Caper.
It's
Okay.
like
Wow.
86,
Wow.
isn't it?
That one I remember going to the
Yeah.
theater and seeing.
No, the Muppet Caper was 81.
80. Or
And
Muppet Takes Manhattan.
84.
84. Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier than I thought.
There's been a lot of
So-
these movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there have been even more even after
yes.
Henson died that continued to come out, but they weren't, to me, they were not as good. I guess, I don't
agree.
know.
I
Muppets
think-
from Space wasn't very good, and Muppet Treasure Island was,
I have
think-
a soft spot in my heart for the Christmas Carol
so
one.
do I. I
That's
do
a
too.
great take on A
That's-
Christmas
yeah.
Carol.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I think, one of the very last films that Henson himself actually worked on
Is that so?
before he died, I think.
And Brian Henson directed it, right?
I believe
think
so.
he did, yeah.
I think part of the problem with the later Muppet movies that we've seen has been that they concentrate more on the humans
Yeah.
than like even like in the advertising and the promotion and the posters, it's always like oh, we have the humans up front and then the Muppets in the background. Whereas these original movies, like the humans were just kind of like not the central focus. They
They were the
weren't the main
accessories.
characters
Right.
unless they were like an antagonist or something like that
Sure.
most of the time.
Right.
But most of the time, like if you look at the posters for those first three movies, it's all
Muppets.
Yes.
Now it's not. So
Yeah,
I think
that's a
that
good
change
point.
has been made where it's like, oh, they're movies about them, but they're kind of just side characters and helping drive the plot instead of it being about them.
And I liked the when they did the Muppets, that movie,
Yeah.
that one, it was okay, but I think that you've got something there. Like it was about them being the Muppets. It was like, oh, we're the Muppets, so we're nostalgic about being the Muppets. But in the original movies, it's like, I'm Kermit, and that's Fozzie, and that's Gonzo, and they weren't the Muppets.
Right.
They were just a bunch of weirdos who found each other by chance and stuck together and followed their dream. And that's what makes that's what makes it a good journey movie. And now it's like, oh, okay, well, we're the Muppets, so now we have to be the Muppets.
But I would
Talk
argue with that Muppets movie, though, it did have that because there was the Muppet who kind of like
Walter.
Yeah.
Yes.
He had his journey of
That's
realizing
true.
he
That's
kind
true.
of belonged
That's
with them.
true. But even then, if you think about, okay, well, why did he have? Because it wasn't just that he was a puppet, but he's like, well, I want to be part of the Muppets. Like he looked up to Kermit, like he was a movie star. Like, oh, I want to be part of that group. Yeah. And I loved Walter. I thought he was adorable.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
But that movie was nice because I felt like it honored Henson's memory and legacy in that sense. It wasn't just, oh, we're just going to do some dumb shit movie about the Muppets and cash in on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just brought up Jim Henson's IMDb page here.
Mm-hmm.
He acted in 91 pieces of work.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
That's
91.
91.
Crazy.
I mean, you can go to like some old school, like go to Clint Eastwood's IMDb page.
Sure. Yeah.
He hasn't been in 91 movies. Maybe you got 50 or 60, maybe 45 or 50.
Yeah.
But this dude was like...
And in a lot of them, he played more than one character.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
Because he was probably doing a lot of voice work as well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they got him on Sesame Street. The like, it's like a big chunk, like a paragraph.
Yeah, there were
of
so many.
every single person that he did on there.
And he did a lot of them throughout the years.
Yeah.
So one thing that we have not touched on of his is Fraggle Rock.
Ooh, I loved that one.
Jim Henson was quoted once as saying something like, when he was coming up with Fraggle Rock, he wanted it to be a show that would bring about world peace. Like he was thinking about, all, because you have all these little ecosystems and they all depend on each other, but they all hate each other because they're like racist towards each other. Like, oh, those big dumb Fraggles, they just eat our doozer sticks. And the Fraggles are like, well, the doozers just work all the time and they don't have any fun. And then you have the, the big old Gorgs and they're like, oh, we're just going to stomp on everybody's, little cage and stuff because we're just big dumb Gorgs, but they all depended on each other. Without one, they all went down. It was all about harmony and unity and trying to bring different cultures together.
Yeah, that was a really, really cool show. I really, really enjoyed that. And that was all like fascinating to me as a kid, the different societies all interacting together. Because I couldn't like verbalize that like you just did as a kid, but like it really, it speaks to you though, I think. And another aspect of the show that I just really, really loved was that guy's, I can't remember the character's name, but he had that like explorer uncle.
Oh, Uncle Traveling Matt.
Yes, Traveling Matt.
Yeah.
He'd come up and visit the silly creatures.
And then he would, he'd be like in
So
the
good.
city, like just like, seeing normal stuff. And
Yep.
he would just describe it in his own like weird understanding way. And
Right.
like the dog was like a big beast to him and chased him down. That was like so exciting when it'd be like one of those segments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when this came out because it premiered on HBO, and I think it was like 1983. So this actually came out right around the time of Return of the Jedi. But I do remember, like, this was a big deal when this came out. This was like Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock. It was huge, and everybody watched the show. Like, this was still during the time where you sat down in the family room and you watched shows with your family.
Yep. Okay.
Sound effects.
Yeah. Woo. We love the Fraggle.
Yeah. But yeah, Fraggle Rock was a really, really big deal, and it still holds up.
It
Like-
does.
Yeah, it really does.
I just watched it like a couple days ago, and it
Yeah.
absolutely 100% holds
Man,
up
I
to
have
me.
I have not watched that in years.
It's great. It's still a ton of fun.
I should watch it.
Yes.
Just so much heart and everything.
Yeah.
I
In all of
remember
it.
really, really enjoying the cartoon too, which
Yeah.
probably was not as good as the show.
I don't know if I saw the Fraggle cartoon.
Yeah, the Fraggle Rock cartoon.
I don't think I ever saw that.
I saw it, but I didn't like it as much as I liked the puppet version.
Yeah.
There's a
thought it
Muppet
was-
Babies cartoon, too.
That,
Oh,
however, I
Muppet
loved.
Babies.
Yeah,
I was all over
loved
that.
that.
Now, I
Yes.
haven't seen the new CGI version, but
I've
the old
seen-
one, That
was
was
so
so
cute.
fun because
Yeah, it
they
was.
would, they'd open the closet and there'd be the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
My
really
favorite
cool.
episode.
That show was really cool. And this is kind of what I wanted to say too. If we talk when we we're going to talk about Great Muppet Caper, but the Muppets kind of like at a really young age got me really interested in film and in classic film because of stuff like that with the Muppet Babies. Like they'd open up the closet and there'd be like clips from some old movie in there, and like I don't know what it was or what it is, but like it got my mind moving, and a lot of the plots of those shows, if I remember correctly, would be like parodies of movies.
Yeah.
And, a
Yeah,
lot of them
absolutely.
I had never seen, or that was the first thing I've ever seen with like that type of imagery or story. And so then when I would see things later, it would be like familiar to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I loved Muppet Caper, because there was a lot of stuff like that in that one, and especially the synchronized swimming scene. It's just like a Bubsy
Love it.
Berkeley.
Yeah.
Which like later in life I learned was a filmmaker who like made movies where like they did that kind of stuff just through the whole entire movie. So, Muppets I credit for the Muppet movies. I one of the things I credit for kind of giving me my taste and interests early on.
Yeah, for me, that cultural awareness came from Sesame Street.
Oh,
There were
yeah.
so many, like you say, little parodies that they would do. But even more, I've been looking more into some of the music that they used in the interstitial films, because a lot of it was not actually written for Sesame Street. It was stuff that came from like old, Moog compilations and stuff like that, and just really bizarre, like atonal synth music, and Philip Glass and Janko Nilovich and stuff like that, stuff that you just wouldn't expect to find on a children's television show. But that's where Henson, drew his inspiration
That's
from.
pretty
So he
cool.
brought it in to show children, without directly saying this is something cultural you should know. He just put it in a film.
And it's
And
cool.
you never forget it. You
It's
never
cool because
forget
it's
it.
not like
Right.
a talk down. It's not
Yeah.
like we're creating this song for kids.
Right.
Which I always kind of resented when I was a kid.
Yeah,
Me too, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
But that was what it was. Like, you were watching a movie about like this short film where you learned how they made crayons. And they would just be playing this bizarre synthy music, and I for years I was like, what is this music? And I finally found out thanks to YouTube. So people were like, oh yeah, that's this and this, and it's just
Awesome.
like, really, wow. And then you go and look it up and you're like, damn.
Technology isn't all bad.
No, it's not.
No. Sometimes internet
stuff.
people know something, and the YouTube comments, it's not all bad.
Yeah.
90% bad.
Well, you'll
Yes.
find that because a lot of the time when I do watch old Sesame Street stuff, and a lot of them, like, they'll even be like, people are like, hey, I was that little kid in the red pants.
Aw.
And
that's
this is
awesome.
what it was like to be on Sesame Street,
Aw.
and that stuff. And it's like, that's so cool. Or they'd be like, oh, hey, my uncle was in that Zydeco band in that film, and this is what they're called if you want to find their music.
That's cool.
Nice.
Just cool stuff like that. That's what the sense and stuff brings out in people a lot of the time. Like, oh, hey, this is a cool thing that you never knew you knew when you were a kid.
So one that we've touched on in the past a lot, but we didn't mention yet, is Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Have you guys all seen this?
I have seen it. Yes, I didn't see it. This is so weird because it has such a nostalgic value for a lot of people, but I didn't see it until I was an adult. It is adorable. I love it. I know. Shame.
For sure.
But no, I absolutely love it, and I just think it's great.
Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas was based on a storybook by my favorite author, Russell Hoban. So, and he also wrote The Mouse and His Child.
Okay.
And the Francis the Badger books. But, one that people don't remember as well is one that Henson made called The Christmas Toy. I don't know if you guys
That
remember
one
that.
I remember
I do
more.
remember
one.
that.
With Rugby the tiger
Yes.
and
Oh,
the
Rugby.
cat toy that was
Yes.
his friend.
Yes.
That kind of creeped me out when I was a kid, to be honest. But
It
I
was kinda
but I
loved
liked it. I wasn't against it.
I was
But-
pro creepy. Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
it's kind
I
of
was
a
into
similar
it.
story to Toy Story. The
Yes.
kid gets a
Yeah.
new toy,
Very much
and
so.
then it's like a better toy, and he's like, no, I
Yeah.
want to be the favorite.
And that's
toy.
funny you mention that, because when Toy Story came out, I was, I think, in like 8th or 9th grade at the time, and I saw it, and I was like, I know this. they already made this movie. It was some weird Muppet. It was like
Yes.
a tiger, and no one believed me.
That was the Christmas
And
toy.
I could not remember for the life of me the name of it or anything. It was just like a really weird, vague memory.
Yeah.
I was 100% on the same wavelength there. Like I could not put my finger on it, but I'm like, they've already had something with this premise. I didn't even realize it was a Henson property,
Yeah, me either.
honestly. And then eventually, with a little bit of research, I somehow figured it out, and then I had to go rewatch it immediately.
Yeah.
And I'm like, finally.
Yeah, same. I was like, I had happened to like come across on the internet like a picture of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was that thing. That was
Yes.
that Toy Story original story.
Yes. I didn't know I thought I was alone in that.
No. I'm
sentiment.
so happy we
Awesome.
connected on this.
Absolutely. I am too.
Everybody likes what they like, and that's all there is to it.
For sure.
So, one we have not touched on yet is really the 1982 film The Dark Crystal, which I think this was a totally different animal for Jim Henson. Kind
There were
of,
no humans in that at
Yes.
all.
he kind of like moved out of the light into the darkness with this movie
Literally.
because there's a lot of like nasty shit going on in this movie
Oh, for sure.
for Jim Henson, and I think it's really kind of cool. And I do think it's kind of his response to the whole, I know I keep bringing up Star Wars tonight a lot, but I do think that this was kind of his response to that we've done this innocent stuff with Sesame Street and the Muppets and Emmett Otter and all these other things. Now let's try to do science fiction fantasy.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think that was smart of him too, because the whole, like, I guess climate of what was cool in 1982 was very different. So people liked that kind of stuff, or we're starting to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
And
did this movie do really well when it first came out, Dana? Do you know?
I don't think it did. I don't think the critics really liked it because they wanted Henson to stick with the Muppet type
course,
stuff,
of
and
course.
because nobody likes it when they do something
Yeah.
different. But it's got a huge cult following, as is it's obvious now. You see the new
Yeah.
Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, which is a prequel to the movie, and it is phenomenal. It is beautiful. It is complex. It is just. Henson would have been so proud of this.
Yes.
It is so beautifully done, and Brian Froud and Toby Froud and Lisa Henson's involvement in the Age of Resistance, it shows so clear as day. And it is just, if you have not watched it, please go watch it. Do yourself a favor. Give yourself the time to let it sink into you. You will love it. I guarantee it. It is just, I can't say enough good things about it.
Has anybody else watched this yet?
I've seen 2 episodes so far, and I'm really into it. I just haven't had the time. And I couldn't agree more. It's just something that I think Henson would have been really, really proud of. And it's just the perfect combination, like you were saying earlier, of like practical effects, like the actual puppets, and then like enhancing it with like a little bit of CG, but not just going completely overboard with it. It's just it's
very
really
subtle.
classy balance right there.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a great, great show.
And what it has really, it has story, it has characters. It's just, and it gives you, there are some familiar characters from the movie. Some of the Skeksis that are in it were in the original film, so you'll know some of them. I mean, they have different voices, but even the voices. I mean, the voice acting in Age of Resistance is phenomenal. I mean, you can almost, not even tell the difference between the Chamberlain, his original voice, and Simon Pegg. I mean, you just...
I love that that's Simon Pegg, by the way.
Yes.
I couldn't even tell, but I just wanted to see who it was, and my jaw just dropped to the floor when I found out it was him. So
Also-
many. And Eddie Izzard is in it.
Mark Hamill is
Hamill.
also in it.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, and it's funny to me because when I first heard the scientist, I didn't know it was Mark Hamill, but I suspected it was because I heard his
like the
his
Joker.
animated Joker.
Right.
I just went, that is like the Joker on Goofballs. That is like, oh my god.
Yep.
And I was like, I was right. It was Mark Hamill.
See, my theory's right. Everything comes back to Star Wars. Everything.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glaring at you. Can you see me
Full
glaring at you? Oh my, 6 degrees to Star
Yeah, I gotta
Wars.
dig into this one. I'm hoping maybe this weekend, if some time clears up, I can start watching it.
Yeah, it is not a background show. You have to
be
immerse yourself
into it.
into this world. And it does a good job at setting it up. Like it doesn't assume that you know everything about the world that you're entering. So
That's true.
It helps if even if you haven't seen the movie.
That's
you
what I was
can-
going to ask.
You can jump
could
right
you
in.
jump? Okay.
Yes, you
That's
could.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes with these prequel things, you have to have all this knowledge before you can start.
Yeah, no, they set this
So-
up really, really well. And it actually reminds me a bit of that film I reviewed a couple of years ago, Yamasong, March of the Hollows. And a lot of the same people worked on it. It has kind of a similar vibe. So that's my little plug for Yamasong. It's a great movie. Go find it.
Stop plugging shit.
No, never.
Never. So what else do we want to touch on with Jim Henson? I mean, there's so much ground to cover here.
There really is. It's almost too much for one show. I mean, I could talk alone about just my favorite puppet, who is a very weird puppet.
Tell us about your favorite puppet.
Okay, my favorite Jim Henson puppet originated in a 1960s short film that he did called The Organized Mind. And this character has a number of names. He's called Limbo, he's called Nobody, he's called the Floating Face. Because essentially how The Organized Mind was made was there was all this like background film, and it was just, and then over that film was this interlaid puppet who was basically just 3 pieces of string that made 2 eyes and a mouth that just kind of floated there. And there would be 2 puppeteers, one working the eyes, one working the mouth, and they would just work together to make him float around the screen and talk. And this film was, it's about, he's just basically a guy talking about his hopes, his fears, his, he has these nightmares, and he talks about it's a really crazy film, and it's on YouTube if you want to find it, but it's really excellent. And I first saw Nobody on Sesame Street. There was a one scene that he was in when Jim started working with the Scanimate program, really early like computer animation. It was really basic stuff, but Nobody was used in a film called A Count of 10, and he had like this. In the original film, Jim Henson voices him, but in the Sesame Street thing where I first saw him, he was voiced by this DJ named William Mercer, I want to say. And he had like this really strange, deep, calming voice. Like imagine Alan Almond doing a Muppet. And he was just this weird, mesmerizing, floating face. And he counted to 10. And he was like, now then, a count of 10. And then there'd be all these weird Moog noises and animation that he was like projected over. So like he was called Nobody because he had no body. And he was just this weird puppet. And for the longest time, I thought
Makes
I made
sense
him up.
to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought I made him up. I thought, because I would try to explain, to people what it was. I thought I dreamed it. And then years later, I found him in a Jim Henson book, and I went, oh my God, this thing was real. And he was in another film. So I looked that up, and I was like, yep, he's my favorite puppet, because he's just 3 pieces of string and this weird, creepy voice. And it's
Brilliant.
just this weird,
weird.
like
Yes.
psychological thing. And Henson was like all over that kind of stuff. It was just
Yeah.
so weird.
What was the name of the movie again?
The Organized Mind.
I have to find that.
Yeah. Is it?
I'm
Is it?
intrigued.
How long is it? Is it short?
It's a short film, but I think it's something like maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. It's a good size. But he did, like I said, he did a lot of weird stuff for Sesame Street. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I remember going, wow, when I was a kid going, what in the world? Like, I learned what I needed to learn, but I just went, whoa.
I think
Right.
kids shows in general were like that back then. A
Yeah,
lot more.
they were.
Like just really that early 80s, late 70s era. Like,
yeah.
like I look back now at some of this stuff, and I'm just like, whoa, that's, things
They
are
got-
different now.
They got away with more,
Absolutely.
a lot more.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of weird because you
I
would
know,
think
right?
now, as we're becoming more culturally aware and more accepting, you would think that you would have more like maybe adult oriented content in kid
Right.
shows, but no.
They scale it
They've
back.
like really tapered it back.
Yeah.
But not even adult oriented, just more sophisticated.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
right.
That's a
That's
better
what I
word for it.
Not
Yeah.
pandering to
Sure.
kids like,
Yeah, you're
hi,
right.
kids, today we're going to learn about the number 12. Instead, we got the Pointer Sisters singing over an animated pinball machine.
So much
Yeah.
I
better.
love that one.
Which,
that was my
you know,
favorite.
everybody loves that. I mean, and if I sing it, I'll get it in everybody's heads. So I'm not going to.
You don't even have to sing it. It's
But you
just
don't,
like
yeah,
already
you
in
just-
there.
Worm right here.
That's how I count to 12 in my head.
Right.
awesome.
You know, there was that. Or Grace Slick doing those race car animations. I mean, just all the involvement from people. And I tell people all the time, if you want to see Stevie Wonder's best live performance, you got to find his performance of Superstition on Sesame Street. He is so into it, and it is such a passionate performance. And I'm not even a huge Stevie Wonder fan, but I remembered that from being a kid and just like having like Paul Simon on there and James Taylor and Johnny Cash and all these people just coming on there singing to the Muppets.
So good.
It was just so great.
They did a lot of that on the Muppet Show too.
Oh,
Yeah.
But on Sesame Street, it was funny because it was just like, oh, here's James Taylor. He's just hanging out on the rooftop with a bunch of kids and Muppets. Like, the Muppet Show was kind of like, here we have the special guest. This is a show where we're all actors backstage and they're coming to visit. Sesame Street was just like, it was Sesame Street. So people just came to hang out there. You know, Harry Belafonte would just kind of hang out on the corner.
And they never really made a big deal about who the like celebrity was because it's for a little kid who has no like frame of reference anyway.
Yeah, like they'd be like, hey, Paul, you know, and Paul Simon be like singing, you know, me and Julio down by the schoolyard, you know.
Oh, I love that song.
It's there's this, you got to find that where he's singing that on Sesame Street because there's this little girl sitting next to him and she's really into it and she's like, yeah, dance, and she's like clapping her hands and he's like looking at her like, okay, you need to stop singing now because I'm gonna sing, and she just keeps going and she's so into it and it's adorable.
That's awesome.
But that again is the great thing about those shows. They're just innocent.
Yeah.
Yes.
And fun. And you don't really have, I mean, you don't have to think too much.
No.
You can just watch and enjoy, which is always nice.
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, we don't really get much kids stuff like this anymore, do we?
No, not at all.
It's very rare.
I tried to watch one of those new Muppet Babies, and it just broke my heart.
I haven't even seen it.
I mean, like, the old Muppet Babies, I'll try to watch it now, and yeah, it was more kid-oriented, whatever, but I can still find some enjoyment out of it. Like, the new one is just, like, way too pandering, even with their, like, cool purple penguin friend that they added Summer.
There's going to be a Baby Swedish Chef, too.
Baby Swedish Chef, what?
They're adding him in. He doesn't have a mustache yet.
I would hope not.
Aw.
You'd have progeria if you had
Yeah. But no, I'll still pull up those old Muppet Babies, the old ones, because the music in those was so great. I had a couple of the records, and I still remember the words to some of the songs.
I don't
love
remember
when
the
that
songs,
happens.
but I do love the like it's like a doo-woppy theme.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
theme
loved
of the
it.
song?
Yeah. Which I guess is kind of like like similar to the scene in the movie.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that scene so much.
I know.
And the song in that scene is so great.
I know.
She's gonna be a movie star, and she's gonna learn to drive a car.
I am
Everyone
sampling that.
knows.
No, you're not. You leave that alone.
I'm gonna.
You don't want to hear my Kermit impression next, or my
I hope.
Swedish Chef.
Yeah.
The coolest thing about the Swedish Chef is that he had human hands.
Yes.
Did he?
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
Yep.
So did Beaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm.
So you can't not do the impression.
You can't. You just
somehow.
can't. Exactly. You can't just like, oh, Beaker. Yeah, you just can't not. It's so great, and it just. And I love that the Muppets are still so much a part of the cultural lexicon, even though some people think that they're irrelevant now. There are still a lot of people who love them.
Well,
And they're coming back soon.
And yeah.
I don't know
we
if
gotta
that's
talk
something
about
they-
it.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't know.
Oh, no.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can't end the podcast without talking about the movie, another movie that has none of the Muppets in it, but Jim Henson, had his hand in, which is Labyrinth.
Yes.
Oh, I totally forgot
With
about
Yeah.
that.
David Bowie as the
Yeah.
Goblin King, and we
And-
all love those pants on David Bowie.
We all do.
Of course.
Pants, magic pants.
That was as a young girl, we all, as a young ladies, like young girls,
It was Jennifer Connelly, correct?
we all got
Yeah,
very,
she was about
very
14 in that
interested
movie.
in the pants.
And those pants.
Chris wants to change the subject. Sorry.
No. I want to change the topic to Jennifer Connelly.
She was about 14 in that movie. So
She was still
So,
beautiful.
very
Yes.
beautiful
Yeah.
Beautiful young girl.
young thing. But yes, and the baby in
she's
that
okay.
film, the baby
Toby
in that was Toby Froud. Yep.
Yes. Who now works on the Dark Crystal show and all
really?
sorts of
Oh,
wow,
other
I didn't know that was
stuff
him.
and
Yeah, he's
followed in
he's the son of
footsteps.
Brian Froud, who does a lot of, and
Design.
they do a lot of the character design and stuff in those movies.
He's a phenomenal artist. I love his work.
And he's a producer too. He does a lot.
Liam, like David Bowie's pants.
Yes, David Bowie's pants.
Yeah, we all know that's the big star of the show.
Oh yeah.
David Bowie's codpiece is the star of
I haven't seen this movie in so long. I do have it. I need to watch it.
You know,
It's incredible.
the big disappointment about that movie for me growing up is realizing that David Bowie was not doing that cool shit with the crystal ball. They had some like expert, you know,
juggler guy.
ball
Wait, you're telling me
manipulator.
David Bowie did not have crystal balls?
No,
He didn't handle his own balls.
no, he was not handling his own balls there. It was they had a professional ball handler who
Had
came
to
up
handle
behind
David
him
Bowie's
and
balls.
handled his
Ball
balls.
handler.
See, we all talk about David Bowie's balls. That's how to get us all talking at once.
I feel like he was one of my first crushes in that movie.
Oh, me
Oh,
too.
God.
Yeah,
Oh.
I remember like we used to always go rent movies, and like every once in a while I'd be like, "We're gonna get a kids movie. What do you want?" And I'd be like, "Labyrinth," and my parents would be like, "Again?" And I'd say,
Yep.
"Yes, again." Forever again.
Yep.
And over and over and over again.
And
That
I
was
would,
me in Flash Gordon.
and I would just be
Awesome.
like, I don't understand why she like I didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't understand like why what was happening was bad.
I didn't either, I don't think.
Like I was like, well, what's going on? Why is she trying to get home? I don't get it. Like the home sucks. She hates the
Right.
baby brother.
Go hang out with some goblins.
She's
you know?
gonna like dance in a ball with David Bowie. Like
That's the life. I mean,
Eating hallucinogenic peaches.
yeah, like that hallucinogenic peach scene. I was like,
Wow.
I mean, it's a little wormy in real life.
what,
But, you know.
I was just kind of like, why is this bad? And then I grew up and I kind of understand like,
I know,
why it
Because
was
that's
bad.
the whole theme of the movie is
but-
growing up and
yeah.
all that. And learning
Yeah.
The scene with the junk woman is like that's right where you get to the point of that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's so poignant.
Oh, you want your dolly, don't you, dear? And then she's like, no, what is all this crap?
It's like the wake up call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my favorite scene in that movie is the chili down scene.
Yes.
I think that's my favorite too.
Which great song, great like segment of like puppeteering and like really
That's
cool
incredible.
like what they did.
Yes.
And what's really cool is this little bit of trivia that you may or may not know is that Gates McFadden, who later went on to play Dr. Beverly Crusher in Star Trek Next Generation, was a choreographer, and she was the main choreographer on that scene. In
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
either. That's
Cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always love that little Star Trek connection.
And I love it too when
Awesome.
they try to take her head off and they're like, wait, it's
know.
not coming off.
Yeah, yeah. That was another thing as a kid that like legit scared me, but I was like, put it on. Like I
Scared you,
loved it.
excited you.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yep.
like, that's creepy.
Those are my favorite moments as kids where I was like scared but like strangely excited at the same time. Like
Yeah.
Yep.
favorite moments of childhood.
Like I wasn't really scared, but I knew it was creepy,
Right.
Yeah.
and I'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, rip her head off, you know.
Just excitingly
That's such a weird kid.
Yes.
We were all weird kids.
That's why we're here. Earl.
That's why we're
That's
here.
why we're locked in this
Else.
basement.
That's why we're
Yeah.
in Chris's basement.
Yeah.
Right.
We're like, I like being scared. Chris is like, I got you locked in my basement. We're all just giggling.
right where I want you.
Yes.
So how do we think that Henson's legacy translates now? And how do we think he continues to affect film and TV in current times? Or is that too broad of a question?
I would like to think that his legacy is more in the spirit of what he did and in the fact that he continued to push forward with technology, and he always tried something new and irreverent that not everybody was going to get. I mean, back in 1989, NBC came to him to do a show called the Jim Henson Hour, and it only ran for 4 months, but I remember it clearly because he did so many new and different things. The Storyteller came out of that. Dog City came out of that. There were just the Thought Lion came out of that. All of this beautiful puppetry and acting and drama and mystical exploration. It all came out of the spirit of let's explore the world. Let's explore fantasy. Let's explore our imaginations and be open to what we create, whether it's light or dark. And I would like to think that when people sit down who really care about storytelling, they're calling back the spirit of Jim Henson and saying, this is my imagination. Let's just open all the doors and see what comes out of it. and see where we go from here. And that's where I feel like Jim Henson's legacy is.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm on Family Feud or something.
Like,
Yes.
Good answer. Yeah. Big money.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say. I mean, I think he really he's somebody that just never settled. I think he was just an innovator to the very end, and it breaks my heart that we still don't have him around to see what cool new innovations he'd be making to this day. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a stumper. Like, I don't think that there's like one specific person. I mean, certainly his family that's kind of taken over is trying to continue on in his spirit and all of them. But outside of that, like, there was just nobody like him. I mean, he was just such an innovator, you know?
Well, I think as far as his family goes, it's kind of cool because a lot of people will try to take advantage of, the estate, try to sell as much as you can and try to do as much as you can. And it seems like it's his son that basically heads everything now, correct?
Yeah.
And his daughters do
and
as
his
well.
yeah.
A couple
Okay.
of his daughters do. He had 5 children, so there were a few.
It seems
of them.
like they're really respectful
They are.
of what he created instead of just trying to like whore it out and pump out as much stuff as you can, because you don't see like a lot of like Muppets toys, and you don't see a lot of merchandise anymore. Like, because if they want to take advantage of it, they could just be dumping junk out all the time.
Well, especially since a lot of it is owned by Disney now. So and Disney's like the king of that.
Right.
Let's have Toy Story toys out 5 months before the movie even comes out. So you don't even know what character this is, but you can have a plush animal of it already.
It drives me crazy.
Me too. Because I'm like, who the heck is that?
Right.
Oh, we already have all these Funko Pops and everything, but we don't even know who this character is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Disney's typically pretty bad with that stuff.
But yeah, you're right. You don't see a lot of that with the Henson stuff. I mean, even with Age of Resistance, there isn't, even now, because I'm all about it. I'm like, okay, I want to get some Age of Resistance stuff, and there's not a whole lot out there yet.
Do you think a lot of, I was wondering this, like, the target audience, I'm assuming it's more people our age that remember it
For
from back
sure.
in the day versus
Yeah.
like kids. I can't imagine kids appreciating it as much. So I'm assuming that's partially why they don't have a lot of toys out. I would love some of those
But
Skeksis
not
action
even-
figures.
yeah.
Though. I mean, just
But like I was looking for like collector figures and stuff like that. There's
Collector,
only a
yeah. couple
couple of them out there. I mean, the Skeksis are just cool looking.
Oh,
I
heck
mean,
yeah.
I want a Skeksis in my front window.
I want a Fizzgig.
Yes, Fizzgigs are awesome.
Yes, they are.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, though, there is this, like me, like I collect toys still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you would think that they would be trying to propagate something with
Right.
that.
Yeah.
For
Like,
demographic.
Yeah.
And there are a few things out, but there's not a lot yet.
Yet.
So I don't know if maybe they're just waiting to see how well it does what they have out.
I think it's
Maybe.
done pretty well.
I think it has too.
We didn't talk about the like kind of failed sitcom they had a few years
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
There, the Muppet. It was just called Muppets, I think,
Or
or
Muppets Tonight or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
It wasn't Muppets Tonight. That was the
No,
one
that
in
was
the early
that's
late
right.
90s.
That was earlier.
That
that
was
one
fun.
failed too.
this was like almost like a parody
Of
or
The
like
Office.
of The Office.
Yeah.
It
That's
was,
right.
and I was so excited when that
Me too.
started, and I think I watched I don't even know. I want to say I watched the first episode and that's it, or first two, but Mike will probably say we watched every single one, and I just blocked it out because it was boring.
Oh.
Yeah, it
But,
really
like-
wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was just called The
watched it.
Muppets. It was
Yep.
out in 2015.
Yeah, so I wonder, like, what they're gonna do with those characters. I don't think they've done anything since, have they?
They just announced, I believe, this week or last, that Disney Plus is going to have a show called Muppets Now,
Yeah.
which is going to bring them back to more of like a reality, or not reality show.
I was gonna
I'm
say,
sorry,
don't tell
no.
me it's a reality show.
I misspoke
Variety
there. I'm so
show.
sorry. Variety show, like the original
Closer
Muppet
to the
show.
Muppet Show.
There
That's
was one,
cool.
yeah, there was one that they were going to do along with that called like something like Muppets Live Again, where it was like kind of like a putting the band back together type thing that was supposed to happen
that one I
like
think
right
got
after
canceled
Muppets Take Manhattan. It already got canceled. And I think maybe the fact that they're trying to bring this back to the roots, like kind of picking up where it all began, that might be a smart move for these characters.
I agree.
Might actually work out.
I
well.
agree. The thing that I didn't like about the Muppets that show was like the tone just was like way off.
It felt weird, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when Disney tries to be hip and cool and with it. It's that's not what we want. We don't want, you know, we don't want that. We want the innocence and the wholesome stuff. 'Cause we don't get that in our real lives. We don't get that at work and, you know, whatever. We get sarcasm and memes all day long.
Right, and it's
we
like...
don't want that in our Muppets and Disney.
There are so many shows that kind of took on that, like a structure of The Office, where it was kind of like a cinema verite type, like reality show type workplace sitcom. And I just, you don't need the Muppets in there.
No.
You just really don't.
No.
Yeah, I'm looking at the poster, and even that looks just like
The Office. Yeah.
Well, there was a joke a long time ago that people on the internet kept saying the Muppet Show was The Office. And like there were all these, you know, like, oh, and this character is this character and this character is that character. And there were like articles where people were comparing the Muppets to characters on The Office.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why they got that idea, and then they went with it, and it just didn't work as well as they thought it would.
No. And it was like the storyline was like annoying too. Now I'm like thinking about it more. It was like Kermit and Miss Piggy were divorced.
Yeah, they broke up.
And it was supposed to be like how they're like dealing with it in the like
Work
I guess
environment.
I don't need that with the Muppets.
Yeah, me either.
No one does.
It's like I don't want to think about Miss Piggy and Kermit going through like a bad breakup and like being like shitty to one another. It was just...
And then, like, their mutant babies are, like, they don't have parents anymore.
Pig frog babies.
And they're like, I'm like, half frog, half pig. I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Well, then they didn't Kermit have, like, a girlfriend for a couple episodes? Like, he started seeing some other pig?
Oh,
Like, it was just so ludicrous. Like, no, you belong with Miss Piggy. Get back with Miss Piggy and stop it.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear that, Andrea, that they're going to go back to like a variety show, because I didn't even realize that like that was something that I would want, or like that's a really good, you know, thing for those characters until I saw that show, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And you know, and also I think that the variety show is something that we don't really get a lot of in since like what, the 70s.
Well,
really.
Well, I mentioned the Jim Henson Hour.
Other than talent shows.
Right.
And the Jim Henson Hour tried that. It was like an hour. It was an hour-long show, obviously. And the first half hour was kind of like an updated, like Muppet Show in the future kind of a thing. And they had all these new different Muppets, and they tried to do that kind of a thing with guest stars and whatnot. And they actually, and then they tried to, you know, like, then the second half would be something like The Storyteller. It was more serious. Like, so the first part would be like the variety show, and the second part would be like a more of a serious thing, and it didn't quite work for the network that it was on. But I think I wish that I could sit in front of the TV and watch those again.
I sat in front of my TV and watched one last night, Dana.
The Jim Henson Hour?
We had a download of it, but I watched the Jim Henson Hour, yes.
But you know what I mean, like actually having it come on TV and like being.
That'd be so nice.
I was 10 or I was 9 or 10 when it came out, so it was like right at the age when I was like, yes, we have another Jim Henson thing to watch, and it was just so cool. And Jim Henson himself would introduce the show. He was
with
part
his
of
lion
it
pal.
with the Thought Lion.
Oh, I love the Thought Lion.
I'm like completely drawing a blank on whether or not I watched this or not. I mean, I was around, you know, really
It
into
only
Jim
lasted
Henson
for 4 months.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was like from April to August.
I could have watched it, and I don't remember.
But yeah, it was so great.
It was.
And I just think, you know, he was really the only person who could have pulled something like that off, even though it didn't end up working out.
Yeah.
And it just, the people who remember it, I think there's nobody I've ever met who was ambivalent about it. If they remember it, they loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I think, you know, sometimes going back to the well can work. And I think with something like the Muppets, just like foregoing everything they've done up to this point and just being like, okay, we're stripping it back down to bare bones. It's these characters hanging out behind stage and doing their show. There's something sweet and special about that.
For sure.
And I think if they can get back to that, and not these like huge adventures and all this stuff, like it's all been fun.
Yeah.
But I think going back to that core, especially now
Yes.
would work.
It's
It
like-
really would.
It's hitting the reset button almost.
Yeah.
It's going back to basics.
Well, that was why that newer Muppets movie worked, the one with Walter in it, because that was what it essentially was. They wanted to go back and fix up the theater and be the Muppet Show again, and they were trying to make it, like, oh, well, here we have this legacy, and there's this picture of Jim Henson on the wall that Kermit looks at, and he's like, yeah, we gotta go back to the beginning, but then they realized that going all the way back to the beginning doesn't really work for a modern audience, and it really. I think it spoke to exactly where they're at right now with the Muppets. Like, we want to make it so that the younger generation will appreciate them. But how do you do that without alienating everyone who already loves them? It's a really hard thing to do with a property as old as the Muppets.
Well,
It is
especially when
hard.
you've got these jaded kids who can basically just watch everything they want.
Yeah.
Like, pull up your phone. Like Bethany doesn't watch TV. Our 18-year-old, everything is on her phone.
Yep.
She watches all of her shows on her phone.
Yep.
Walking through the house, watching TV. In bed, watching TV. Hopefully not driving and watching.
Yeah.
You know.
Right, that'd be bad.
But yeah, so I think I've thought about this a lot, and I've actually been thinking about it the past couple weeks a lot now that my kids are getting a little bit older. It's kind of weird because we have 4, and they grow up so fast. Everything flies by. And like, I've been thinking about that. Like, I remember with my parents, like Thursday night, we sat down, we watched The Cosby Show, Family Ties, Cheers, then Night Court.
Yeah.
You know?
Good block of television.
Yeah.
And
right
we
there.
actually sat down and watched
Yep.
stuff together.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And, The Muppet Show is back from that era a little bit earlier, but that was another one of those shows that we would sit down and watch together.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's like missing now because everything is on demand. Everything is streaming. I can go on YouTube and watch Minecraft videos all day long if I wanted to for a year,
Yeah.
or longer, a decade. I could probably watch a decade of Minecraft videos. And I think the kids have kind of lost a little bit of that where like the practical work and those visuals and the puppetry, like they don't get that respect that they did. But I do think like having something that a family could sit down and watch
Yeah.
together and enjoy together
And there's-
is important.
There's
Yeah.
no anticipation anymore either. Like, I remember, like you say, you'd watch TV with your parents, so you understood after dinner when the news was over. Then you got to watch your Muppet Show or your Fraggle Rock and so you
Right.
sat through the news with your parents
Ugh.
to get to your show. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited for my show to come on,
Yes.
or you had to, hurry up and watch your show because it was on before bedtime, or can I stay up a little later to watch whatever is on at 10 o'clock, please, Mom, can I stay up? Now it's like, oh, well, I can watch it at 9 a.m. if I want to. I can watch it on my break at work. I can be in my bedroom watching something and somebody can be in my living room watching something else.
Yeah, there's no urgency
there's-
anymore.
Right.
It's, and you can, there's no, and even the commercials, there's no commercials. You can get Netflix without commercials, or you could DVR something and buzz through them. I mean, there's not as much of an experience about watching television as there used to be. And like, that's where Henson started, was this new medium was so exciting to him because it was just like the radio for him, like gathering around with his family to listen to the stories and experience that together. And then he moved on to television and was able to do it, for other families. And that's where it all leads up to. And we don't have that anymore, really.
It's
I mean,
actually kind of sad.
it's in
It
bits and
is.
pieces
I
now.
don't mean to be like all emotional
But it's-
or anything
yes,
like that.
It
but
is.
It's fragmented.
Yeah.
And thus we as people become fragmented.
Well, and
that's deep.
I do think about this a little bit too.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Like
myself to sleep.
we all have those memories of like sitting down as a family and like watching stuff together,
Definitely.
like the Muppets or Fraggle Rock or whatever.
Sure.
Like they don't have that. They just
No.
don't. Like literally, like Alicia will watch, like Lucy will be, or Matilda will be like, "Oh, can we watch a show?" And they'll watch a show together. But it's always like those two. And then like Lucy will be like, "Oh, can we watch Stranger Things?" Okay, it's those two. And they'll be like, "Oh, Connor, want to watch a movie?" Okay, but it doesn't have that same like togetherness
Yeah.
as it did. And I guess it just goes to speak for how things have changed, you know? So,
Well, and you would wait for stuff like it's The Great Pumpkin. It's
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
on CBS that whatever night, and that
Yeah.
was the night you would wait for that
Right.
night to come and sit down, and you just remembered you'd see that little special presentation, and you get all excited. It's The Great Pumpkin, yeah. I still watch The Great Pumpkin on TV when it comes on.
I would if I had
great.
TV. We just don't have TV anymore.
I'm probably the only one who
Yeah.
does.
I
Oh, I
have,
have it.
I
Oh,
have a Roku, and I downloaded the Pluto TV app, which I've actually been really enjoying when I don't really know what to put on.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's like flipping through channels, and like there's just
Nice.
stuff that's just on live. And today I discovered the American Gladiators channel that just plays nothing but American Gladiators.
I
episodes.
love that.
That's old school.
So yeah, and you can't pause it or rewind it, or and it
Yeah.
plays
Cool.
commercials, and
Yes.
you
Nice.
know
That's what I'm talking
Michael be
about.
talking, and I'm like, just shut up! I wanted to hear what the color commentary was on this. Like I can't pause and rewind. You're not used to this anymore.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a totally different social experience.
I know he got off of Henson a little
yeah.
bit, but I think it's all in the spirit of what he would probably say about
sure.
the same thing. He would
Oh, yeah.
probably be
Agree.
like,
Yep.
this sucks, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a really I guess iconic television person.
Oh, big
you
time.
know, not just the movies that we talked about. So yeah.
An innovator across
Yeah.
the board.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes.
And I mean, I remember he died in 1990, and I remember that
Me too.
very clearly.
Yeah.
That was probably like one of the first celebrity deaths that like hit me, where
Same
I
here.
was like,
Same.
well, wait a minute, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what happened to him? And like, my mom kind of had to be like, well, he got sick and died. But like, she gave me a cute little speech about how his work and his legacy would like live on forever, and I could
true.
always go back and visit Kermit and everything, and
Aw.
so I always remember that, like when I think about him, like one of
Yeah.
the first real losses of, in media that I had.
Because
Yeah.
you didn't know that you mourned Willie when Mr. Hooper died on Sesame Street. We were talking about that in
Yeah.
the car
We did,
about
yeah.
the
Yeah.
episode of Sesame Street where Mr. Hooper died, and they were trying to explain it to Big Bird.
Yeah.
We didn't know that we were really talking about an actor,
Yes. Yeah.
but because he was an old friend of ours.
Yeah. Because that's what it's when you're a kid, that's real to you. That was the
Yeah.
reality. So,
And that's why it was so monumental that they handled it the way they did.
yeah.
And they just were straightforward about it. He died, Big Bird. He's not coming back.
You gotta be, right.
And it's okay to cry and be sad, but
Yeah.
you got to love him and know him while he was alive. So be happy about that.
I mean, what's funny is we're talking about this a little bit more. It's very reminiscent of Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was another one.
Yeah.
Sure.
Same qualities,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course.
Yes.
same educate, and use emotion and, tell kids it's okay to feel bad or sad or,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it always, and to me, even, looking around the world right now, and, we're talking about toxic masculinity and all that. And you realize that we had such good masculine role models when we were growing up. We had Jim Henson and Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, we
and,
did.
It's true. Yeah.
And we could look to them for the examples of gentle masculinity and wise and kind masculinity.
And that's important. I
point.
think that's important to bring up when we want to talk about like the things that we don't like and say toxic masculinity. I think it's important to bring up like the men who don't display that, you know.
Sure.
Yep, it's important to give credit where it's due.
Yes. Yes.
So let's not talk about Rambo anymore.
Yes, Chris, let's not talk about Rambo anymore.
More Kermits. That's Rambo.
Yes, there you go. Let's.
All right, guys. This was episode 127 of Real Crime. We'll be taking next week off because my puppy is having surgery.
Aw.
So,
A little cone of shame.
yep, little cone of shame. So I'll have to be coddling her.
Nursing her.
Yeah. She's such a good girl.
Yeah, she is.
So, all right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
Go. Bye bye.
Thanks for coming, Dana. Thanks for coming, Andrea.
You're so welcome.
It's good having you guys.
Happy to be here.
And Mara's always here, so I don't have to thank her.
Aw.
So thank you anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you're welcome just the same.
Yeah. Aw. All right, guys. Bye.
Visit us at www.themoviesleuth.com and find The Movie Sleuth on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and iTunes.